Just a note at the top to let you know that today's webinar is sponsored by Kylos Genetics. Being diagnosed with and treated for ADHD can be stressful, especially when it comes to finding the right medicine. Genes play a role in how you will react to ADHD medication. Kylos can make this process easier through genetic testing that helps you determine which treatments will work for you or your child. Learn more about how Kylos Genetics can help you understand your health at www.kylosgenetics.com. Today we're very fortunate to have Dr. Ned Hallowell with us. Dr. Hallowell, a child and adult psychiatrist, is author of the New York Times best-selling Driven to Distraction and Delivered from Distraction, and is founder of the Hallowell Centers in New York, San Francisco, and Sudbury, Massachusetts. He speaks around the world on the topic of ADHD. Just a little housekeeping. If you're new to our webinars, post your questions in the box on your screen. Ned will give an introduction for a few moments, and then he'll take questions afterward. Also, Dr. Hallowell has made available a free handout titled 50 Tips for Managing Adult ADHD. You can download it from the handout pane of the control panel on the right of your screen. So with that introduction, let me turn it over to Ned. Thanks, Ned, for being here.
Thank you so much, Wayne, for inviting me, and thank all of you for tuning in or logging on. I don't know what the term is. It's always interesting to give a webinar because the audience is spread out. I was saying to the folks earlier, we have some 700 people in the room, and the room is the world. So I'm glad to join you wherever you are, and I hope I can give you some useful information. As Wayne said, I have offices in Seattle, Washington, San Francisco, California, New York City, and Sudbury, Massachusetts. And today I'm talking to you from my office in Sudbury, Massachusetts, which is just about 20 miles west of Boston. It's an unseasonably warm day here today. It's about 60 degrees, and I'm thrilled to be able to have this chance to connect with you all. Just so you know, I have ADHD myself. I also have dyslexia, and I wouldn't trade either one of them for the world, and I'll explain why to you. But I should hasten to add, if you don't understand ADHD, it can be a terrible curse, and that's really what makes it so interesting. This is a condition that can absolutely take you to the top of life, but it can also plummet you to the bottom. And so we need to take it very seriously. And the biggest undiagnosed group are adults, which we're here to talk about today. Most people in the medical profession and the mental health profession really don't think of ADHD when they're evaluating an adult. And as a result, the great majority of adults, estimates at least 75%, and some people say more like 90%, are not diagnosed, which is a real shame because the benefits are tremendous. So how do you go about getting diagnosed? Well, first of all, you want to know what it is. You want to have it come to mind, and that's really what doesn't happen to most people. That's why it's not diagnosed. They don't think of it. They've never heard of it. They don't think of it, and their doctor doesn't think of it. So what would the telltale signs be? What should you be on the lookout for in yourself, in a friend? And by the way, you can do a tremendous favor to a friend if you say, you know, I heard this webinar or I read this book or what have you, and your struggles really could be explained by ADHD, and they'll say, well, isn't that just hyperactive boys? And you say, no, it's grown men and women. Among the adult population, the biggest undiagnosed group are the women. Nobody thinks of that. So what are the telltale signs? What the most common reason someone comes to see me as an adult is unexplained underachievement. In other words, they know they could be doing better. They may be doing very well, by the way. You can be top of your field and you know, excelling and still have undiagnosed ADHD. You know, I have patients who are billionaires saying, you know, thank God I got this diagnosis because now I'm doing even better. So you need not be failing, but you are underachieving, and you know in your heart, in your gut, that if only you could find the key, you could be doing so much better. You just don't know what that key is. But this unexplained underachievement, in other words, it's not due to some obvious reason like you're unable to work, or you are limited by resources, or you know you have some medical condition that's holding you back. You don't know why you're not doing well. And if you then go to someone who knows about ADHD, or if you can't find such a person, read my book, the book John Rady and I wrote, Delivered from Distraction. Driven came out in 1994, Driven to Distraction, and Delivered from Distraction is newer, it's 2005. Read that, and if you can't read a whole book, the first chapter is called The Skinny. Read this if you can't read the whole book. A lot of people with ADD don't want to sit down and read an entire book. And what you'll find, you know, you begin with unexplained underachievement, then the other symptoms that you'll see is inconsistent focus. Now, attention deficit is a terrible misnomer because it's not a deficit of attention, it's a wandering of attention. If anything, people with ADHD have an abundance of attention. What they have trouble doing is controlling it. When they're interested, I should say when we're interested, we pay super attention, we pay hyper attention, we focus better than anyone. It's like laser beam focus. The building could be burning down and you're still sitting there working on your project. It's just that when you're not interested, when the meeting is boring, the conversation is boring, the book is boring, whatever you're involved in is boring, your mind goes elsewhere. It doesn't go empty, it goes elsewhere. The ADD mind is really like a toddler on a picnic. It goes wherever curiosity leads it, with no regard for danger or authority. So this ADD mind is just always out there exploring, looking around, trying to pursue whatever seems enchanting, and that can lead to your missing key important points at the meeting, say, or on the agenda, or in the book. And then that leads to the underachievement because your attention is inconsistent, so your productivity will have gaps in it, will have holes in it because of what you've missed. And it's not a matter of trying harder. These people get told over and over again, get your act together, you've got so much talent, why can't you do better? Telling someone with ADHD to try harder is about as helpful as telling someone who's nearsighted to squint harder. It misses the fundamental point. And so once again, you instead of beating up on yourself, which is a terrible habit most adults with ADD have, go see someone who can evaluate you and offer you treatment. Other symptoms that occur, trouble with organizing, planning, prioritizing. What's the jargon term is executive function. It means your brain's capacity to plan and organize your day, to have a sort of a logical sequence of events. The ADD brain is going off on tangents all the time, so there's sort of a jumble. You go off in several directions simultaneously, and so you miss meetings, you don't follow through on plans, you commit to something and forget about it. All of that is under the heading of executive function. Also, trouble with time management. I often say in the world of ADD there are basically two times. There's now and not now. So you say, well, we're having a meeting next Wednesday, and you just say, well, not now, and it's just gone. It's not that you're not interested, it just disappears. And what you do is you end up living a life of chronic procrastination. You put things off to the very last minute until not now is almost now. And then in a panic, you get it done. And what you're really doing is you're self-medicating with adrenaline, because in a panic, you get a big bolus of adrenaline, and then you can sit down and focus and get it done. But That's not a good way to live, living from crisis to crisis and panic to panic. Uh, Also, a tendency toward impulsive behavior, reckless decision making, shoot from the hip, this impulsivity. Russ Barkley calls the holy trinity of ADD: distractibility, impulsivity, and restlessness or hyperactivity. We usually don't see hyperactivity in adults, but we certainly see restlessness, trouble sitting still, trouble staying put. At a lecture, you want to get up and pace around the back of the room. In a restaurant, you want to get up and go to the bathroom several times. You just have trouble staying in one spot, drumming your fingers, the legs crossed with one leg going up and down, that sort of thing. So a tendency toward impulsivity and impatience. Those of you listening to me right now, you want me to hurry it up. Okay, got that point. Move it on, move it on, move it on. And, cut to the bottom line. And in a business meeting, that can be adaptive, but not so much in a romantic conversation. Okay, so you love me. What's your next point? People with ADHD have trouble lingering over the moment. They have trouble savoring the sunset or lingering over the painting in the museum. They want to get on to the next bit of stimulation. And that's another part of it, an appetite for high stimulation. People with this kind of mind love high stimulation, love danger, love conflict. And so you'll find them in professions like trial attorney or traders on the commodities exchange or a brain surgeon or an airline pilot. And don't worry, they pay attention in the OR. They have trouble with the post-op paperwork, often entrepreneurs, in fact, most entrepreneurs have this condition because they're their own boss. They're free, and they can go off and start a new company. What they really need to do is work with someone who has what I call attention surplus disorder. So, the ADHD person is the idea person, and then the attention surplus person is the one who sweats the details and makes the thing happen. Other qualities: low tolerance of frustration, tendency to have many projects going simultaneously, trouble with follow-through, often a tendency to self-medicate, either with substances, alcohol, cocaine, or activities, gambling, spending, sex. The internet has ushered in a whole new wave of compulsive, if not addictive behaviors, including addiction to electronics themselves. It's the newest addiction. And you can find people wasting great gobs of time doing what I call screen sucking. They just glomp onto a screen and don't let go of it. Now, those are the negatives. Now, you also see a host of positives, and this is what most people don't mention. But take that core triad, Barclay's Holy Trinity, the distractibility, impulsivity, and restlessness. Turn each one of those on its head, and you get a positive. The flip side of distractibility is curiosity. And curiosity is a very valuable quality that cannot be taught or bought. The flip side of impulsivity is creativity. What is creativity but impulsivity gone right? You don't plan to have a creative idea. You don't say it's 1:15, time for my creative idea, and lay it like an egg. They pop. Creativity depends on disinhibition, depends on spontaneity, depends upon some degree of impulsivity, if you will. And then finally, restlessness. You get to be my age, I'm 66, it's called energy. I'm really glad I've got this little turbo pack. So it's all a matter of controlling the power you have. I often say it's like you've got a Ferrari engine for a brain. You've got this way powerful brain, but you have bicycle brakes. And the trick is to find a brake specialist. I often say to people, I'm just a brake specialist, to help you control the power that you have, this tremendous power of imagination, of creativity, of the pathfinders, the discoverers, the people who colonize this country. That's the ADD population, and it carries with it tremendous benefit and tremendous risk. The prison population is overrepresented with people with ADHD. So is the addicted population. So are the halls of the unemployed and the multiply divorced and the accident prone. All of those are overrepresented with ADHD, but so are the halls of the Pulitzer Prize winners, the Nobel Prize winners, the self-made millionaires and billionaires. Most entrepreneurs have it. You find the top of any field, and I'll find you someone who has ADHD. So it's high stakes poker, getting a handle on this, learning to strengthen those brakes so you can become the fabulous success you have it in you to become, rather than the disaster that this can create in your life if you're not aware of it. Getting a diagnosis is so critical, and there is no test for ADHD. That's one of the common misconceptions. The closest thing we have to a test is your history. So you go to a clinician, and make sure you go to a clinician who understands it and also understands the strengths associated with it. You don't want to go in and get one of these diagnoses that's just laced in pathology, and you come out thinking you've just been told you're a future axe murderer, or you're a worthless human being. You want to see someone who realizes that there's a lot of talent embedded in the problems, and there are problems embedded in the talent. In any case, it's your history that will tell the story, but you got to get the history is taken from multiple sources, because we people with ADHD, we're not good self-observers. So you always want to bring along a spouse or a colleague or a friend, someone who knows you well, who can give their point of view on what you're like. And if it's ADD, it'll be in the history. It'll be right in there. Now, we often supplement the history with neuropsychological testing, but that's not a test for ADHD. It provides a wealth of additional information, but it is not definitive. The definitive test is the history, as taken from more than one source. And if you have ADHD, it will appear in your history for sure. Okay, once you have this diagnosis, the first step is to embrace it, to understand it. You need to learn what it is and what it isn't. The people who do best with this are the people who really own their ADHD and manage it. And the only way you can do that is to really understand it. Understand the benefits that it confers, the creativity, the energy, the entrepreneurialism, the intuition, the powerful emotional component that most of us have, and then understand the obstacles, the problems with executive function, the problems with focusing on boring details, the problems with impulse control. I mean, all of that. Understand all of that package. So education is really the first step into treatment. Learning about it, really getting it, so that it's not just a list of symptoms that you memorize, or some sort of casual one-liners. Because you want to be able not only to explain it to yourself, but to other people, like your spouse. Now, I wouldn't explain it to your employer. Unfortunately, we're still in a world where most people don't understand ADD. So if you say to your employer, I have ADD, your employer will likely think that means you're unreliable, you're a crackpot, it won't help you at work. So you may talk about the symptoms. You can say, I'm a great idea guy, but I'm not good on details. But don't use the label, because most people in the workplace still just don't get it. Okay, once you've embraced it, once you've understood it, there are a number of steps that you can take simultaneously. Getting a coach is a great idea. This is someone who can help you get organized, someone who can help you plan, follow through, not get sidetracked. And coaching is a field that's really evolved over the past 20 years. Most coaches can work over the telephone, so you don't have to go to someone's office. I recommend you meet the coach in person at least once, so you have a feel for that person. And it becomes a very sustaining and constructive relationship. You can meet for 10 minutes every day over the phone, or for 45 minutes once a week. Whatever works for you is what you should do. In addition to coaching, you want to pay close attention to lifestyle. Exercise is tremendously important. My colleague and friend John Rady wrote a wonderful book called Spark, The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain, in which he detailed the huge amount of evidence that shows how incredibly good for your brain, not to mention the rest of your body, physical exercise is. And you can use it not only getting exercise regularly, but also in the acute moment. If you're glazing over and spacing out, get up from your desk and do 25 jumping jacks, or run up and down stairs a few times. It will instantly push the reset button on your brain. You'll get a whole new set of brain chemistry. and works quickly and works really well. So physical exercise, nutrition, the closer you can come to vegan, the better. I can't come very close at all, but stay away from junk food, stay away from sugar. Sugar is the new poison. So stay away from soda pop, stay away from simple sugars in general, and try to eat whole foods. Try not to self-medicate with too much alcohol, marijuana. Sleep, people with ADD tend to need less sleep than the average person, but you do need some sleep, so don't join the parade of underslept Americans that we're surrounded by these days. Meditation is wonderful. Lydia Zylowska, Zylowska, wrote a marvelous book called The Mindfulness Cure for Adult ADHD. Go to Amazon. It's a great book and really, really solid research that they did out there at UCLA. And they got results using meditation on a par with medication. So if you'll do it, and don't tell me people with ADD can't meditate. We can. We really can. And it's readily available, it's free, and it's effective. You just need to do it regularly. And then, of course, there's medication. And medication is the most misunderstood of all the interventions we have. It's unfortunate that that's the case, but people ask me, do you believe in Ritalin? And my answer is it's not a religious principle. Ritalin is a medication, and like any other medication, it can be helpful or it can be dangerous. If you grind it up and snort it, that's dangerous. If you overdose with it, that's dangerous. If you take escalating doses of it, that's dangerous. But if you use it properly, under the supervision of a doctor who knows what he or she is doing, then it can be a godsend. It can be as effective as eyeglasses. People often wonder, will it take away my special sauce? Will it take away my pizzazz, my creativity, my joie de vivre? No, it won't. And if it did, if it happened to, you just stop the medication. That's the beauty of stimulants. They're in and out of your system the same day. So if it does anything you don't like, if you turn purple or, grow a third ear, you just stop the medication and you go back to the way you were. So whatever the meds do, they're immediately reversible. So a trial of medication is just that. It's a trial of medication. And if it's helpful, you continue it. If it's not helpful or causes side effects, you stop it. It's that simple. I mean, what we need is an attack of common sense when it comes to medication instead of these arguments that turn it into a hot button issue, which it really should not be. When the meds and discontinue them. In my own case, they don't work. So my medication is caffeine, which is the world's medication. The prescription stimulants just give me side effects. So I go through my day with my coffee. Don't be afraid of medication. Go see a doctor who's experienced. It's very important that you see someone who really has experience with these, because there are subtleties to them and complexities. You need to be in the hands of someone who understands that. And before you start the meds, get clear. Get emotionally clear, because they'll work much better if you don't take them sort of with anxious apprehension. Get clear that these are safe, and if you use them properly, they're very safe, and that if they help you, you'll continue, and if they don't help you, you'll stop them. It's just that simple. It's a shame that an intervention that is so effective 80% of the time is so feared and really becomes very controversial. Alan Schwartz, who writes for the New York Times, has become a friend of mine. He has a book coming out in September called ADHD Nation, in which he details the ways in which these meds are overprescribed, misused, and dangerous. And he's absolutely right. They can be misused, they are overprescribed, and they can be dangerous. But at the same time, if they're used properly, they can absolutely change a life dramatically for the better. So don't take them off your list of possibilities. Just work with a doctor who really knows what he or she is doing. There are new treatments on the horizon, and the future really does reside in non-medication interventions. I'm sure before I die, we'll have brain games that are very targeted toward enhancing the attention circuitry. Right now there are companies that offer more than they can deliver along those lines, but There's one in the making called the attentive system that I've been part of the research for the past 5 years that I think is very promising. There will be others coming down the pike for sure, and I think we'll get more mileage out of nutrition. The whole field of the gut, people are calling that the forgotten organ, and the whole field of the flora in your gut and how that interacts with your mental status is a burgeoning field, as is the field of epigenetics. So the genome and the gut genome is something that we're starting to assess and intervene around, as well as how the environment influences the expression of your genes. And I think the whole thing of screen sucking, of overuse of electronic devices, influences the expression of genes, and I think that's why we're seeing the sort of the spread of what I call pseudo ADD. It's not true ADD, but it looks for all the world just the same, and it's due to an overuse of electronics and an underuse of what I call the human moment, the human connection. And I call it the other vitamin C, vitamin connect, and I prescribe it for all my patients, and I prescribe it for all of you listening right now. Make sure every day you get multiple doses of a friendly face, multiple doses of a conversation, multiple doses of just hanging out at the water cooler and talking about this and that. Talking about this and that, small talk is anything but small. It's very big. It's harmonizing, it's normalizing, it's stabilizing. Make sure you get some of that. Don't spend your whole day in front of a screen conducting your social life via text and email. That's not good for you. Most people don't realize this, but social isolation is as dangerous a risk factor for early death as cigarette smoking. Lisa Berkman proved this 25 years ago. It's been replicated many times. Social isolation is really bad for you. And short of killing you, it puts you in sort of a less than zestful state of mind. It takes the glisten off of life. It takes the sparkle out, and you become kind of glassy-eyed and walking through your day. And what you're missing, you're not depressed. What you're missing is that vitamin connect. You're missing the high five. You're missing the laugh. You're missing the pat on the back. That's another thing that we don't touch each other anymore because we're afraid. The political correct police are out there watching. So we've given up touching. We've given up face-to-face contact. We've given up the human connection that's right there for the taking. It's right there, readily available, free, and really good for you. And the other thing I'm prescribing to everyone is get a dog. If you possibly can, get a dog. If your zoning laws allow it, and if you're not allergic, get a dog. If you must, get a cat, but I'm giving myself away here. I'm more of a dog person than a cat person, but have a pet. Pets are unbelievable mental health professionals. They're the best mental health professionals out there, and once again, they're very inexpensive. So if you possibly can, get a pet. And I'll close and take some questions, but mention just a couple of other important points. Marry the right person and find the right job. Or if you don't marry, hook up with, connect with the right person and find the right job. A lot of people with ADD are in the bad habit of living with and working for a demeaning sort of caricature of a bad fifth-grade school teacher. That's not a good idea. Why do they do that? Because I think that's what they need. They got the idea back around fifth grade that they needed lots of reprimands and redirection and put-downs. And of course, that is the last thing they need. They need to find someone who really believes in them. I mean, my life is made by my wife Sue, and it's God, delivered her into my life, and if it weren't for her, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. So marrying the right person and then finding the right job. And the right job is a job where you can use your talents and be minimally penalized by your shortcomings. So finding the right mate and finding the right job are obviously critical for anyone, but particularly those of us with ADD, because we tend to fall into the wrong relationship and the wrong job. Well, I'm going to stop here. I just want to end with the reminder that managed properly, this kind of mind is a great asset in your life, is a turbo pack, is a ticket to very interesting places. But if it's not managed properly, it can cause tremendous pain, tremendous loss, and take an enormous toll on your life. Sometimes people misrepresent what I say. I don't say ADD is a gift. I say it is potentially a gift. But it is also potentially a horrible, horrible curse. And that's why you really need to take it seriously and work with professionals who understand it, get the complexity of it, get the multiplicity of interventions that we have, and understand that there's far, far, far more to it than simply taking a pill. It's really a lifetime of working to contain, manage, direct the amazing brain that you've got. Well, let me take your questions and see what you have to say.
Okay. We have plenty of them, of course, and one is red flags about the actual person who's evaluating you. When at a certain point, what should you look for that would indicate that this person is not either understanding ADHD or you're not getting along with him or her? What are the red flags of sort of a bad diagnosis as you're sort of sitting there being evaluated? Is there anything patients should be looking for?
Absolutely. Right at the top of the list is what you said. If you don't like the person, I don't care how good they are. If you don't like them, you should see someone else. And that's not the other person's fault. It's just you're a bad match. But trust your gut, because this is an intimate relationship you're entering into. You need to trust this person, and you get a much better outcome if you like the professional. You should ask, do you see many adults who have ADD? And if they say, oh yeah, I see a few, that's not what you want. You want someone who sees them regularly, because finding specialists who get this, it's not easy, but it's worth the search. It really is worth looking around. The best way to get a referral is from someone else who's been there. Some people come, to my office in New York or Boston to see me and get started, and then I can refer them back to their PCP for follow-up, and we can have phone appointments. That's another way. But the red flags are you don't like the person, or they just don't have much experience in treating ADD in adults. And obviously, if they start saying things are wrong, like, well, you're too successful to have ADD, or, well, you're paying attention to me now, you couldn't have ADD. Those are some of the that clearly reflect a poor understanding of what ADD is all about. I would read my book, Delivered from Distraction, before you go to see a professional, because it'll give you an instant way of gauging, is this person on the beam.
Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned that taking a history was the gold standard, but several people have asked about additional tests, such as rating scales, and then to get what they call a finer grain view of their ADHD. And on top of that, several people have asked about, should your provider be looking for comorbid conditions, and if so, should they go about doing that?
Rating scales are fine. In fact, almost everyone uses them, and it's a way of trying to sort of standardize diagnosis. I'm not a big fan of rating scales just because they're leading the witness. I'd rather have someone describe their life, or have a teacher comment, or a spouse's comment. What is this person like? And if the symptoms of ADD are there, they'll volunteer them. But I'm in a distinct minority. Almost everyone uses rating scales, so by all means use rating scales, and they're a way of trying to standardize the diagnosis. The other question about comorbidities, I object to that term because I don't think of ADD as morbid, so I prefer to say coexisting conditions. But again, I'm in a minority there, and so comorbidity is the standard term. And there usually is a coexisting condition. In my own case, I also have dyslexia, and that's pretty common. About 25 to 30% of people with ADHD also have a reading problem. Other common coexisting conditions are depression and anxiety. Now, often those two occur in the wake of the untreated ADD. Unfortunately, what happens for most adults is they get their depression and anxiety identified, and they get put on an SSRI, and they get a little bit better, but they're not getting at the root cause, which is the unidentified ADHD. If you have ADHD, you're going to underachieve, and that's depressing. So you can look like you're depressed, but you're not really depressed. You're just bummed out because you know you could be doing better. And if you have untreated ADHD, you're gonna be making these mistakes. You're not going to hear something. You're going to screw up. You're going to speak out of turn. Well, that's anxiety provoking. If you don't know what you're going to miss, what you're going to overlook, who's going to come down on you next, you're walking around anxious. So the depression and the anxiety may be artifacts of the untreated ADHD, and oftentimes when you simply begin the treatment of the ADHD, the depression and anxiety go away. But sometimes not, and sometimes you have both of those to deal with. And then the other big one to watch out for in adults is some kind of substance abuse or compulsive activity, be it sex, gambling, or electronic devices. Very, very common. And the thing that's key there is to get around the shame people feel and say, you know, this is real normal. It's just not an adaptive way of what I call scratching the itch at the core of ADD, so let's find some adaptive ways. And once they get treatment, they're often able to give up their substance or their bad habit.
Mm-hmm. How long, a lot of people have talked about too short an evaluation. How long, realistically, does it take to evaluate ADHD on average?
Well,
would it be 2 sessions, or could you do it in 1?
If you see someone who really knows what they're doing, and again, that's an important caveat, I can certainly do it in 45 minutes. And now I'll refer them for testing often, and if the case is very complex, 45 minutes won't be enough. But for the majority of adults, 45 minutes will certainly put us in the ballpark. And again, it's not just with the identified patient, it's with someone else along with that person. And then what I usually do is refer them to my book and have them come back and say, did you see yourself in the book? And so it need not be drawn out. Now, with a very complex case, yes, 2 or 3 sessions and testing, but for most adults with ADD, when they walk in the door, it's just clear. You know, you want to say, you know, praise be, you finally found your way to my office. Where have you been all your life? And because it's such a relief when they get the diagnosis, and a lot of the work is dealing with the emotions that the diagnosis creates.
Mm-hmm. One adult has said that the Feingold diet works well for him, but he has been debunked. So why does it work for him? I mean, what is the bottom line on the Feingold diet?
Well, Feingold should not have been debunked. I mean, he sort of brought it on himself because he was so extreme, but there's no doubt that nutrition influences mentation, no doubt about it. And a lot of people find that symptoms are reduced by cutting back on sugar and additives, and that's what the Feingold diet was all about. So I have great respect for Dr. Feingold. It's too bad that he's been debunked, but like so many things, it's sort of fads and trends. And what I say to people, look, whatever works, as long as it's safe and it's legal, use it. Feingold diet is not for everyone, but in fact, most people find a modified version of the Feingold diet to be helpful. And so I think we should not debunk him. We should, you know, and he probably had to overstate his case to get heard, which is unfortunate. That's what you have to do often. But he was a pioneer in the field, and he really pioneered the use of nutrition in helping mentation in general and ADHD in particular. So we should give him his proper praise, and if it helps you, whoever was asking that question, by all means, go with it and realize you're in good company. By the way, gluten-free and lactose-free, a lot of people with ADHD find those dietary modifications to be helpful. Try it. Be your own experimental animal. As long as it's safe and it's legal, try whatever you want. I went through a phase where I was trying all kinds of supplements, and I concluded, if nothing else, I had the most expensive urine in Boston.
Someone has asked about neurofeedback. Any evidence for that in terms of treatments for ADHD?
Well, I think it's the coming thing. I think when we get more sophisticated with neurofeedback, it will be. I think it'll be a mainstay. Right now, not so much. Right now, what you end up doing is you get very good at playing the game, but it doesn't generalize into the classroom, into the workplace, what have you. But I think at its core are principles that once we learn in a more sophisticated way to take advantage of them, and I think the attentive system is an example of this, I think it will become a mainstay. So I wouldn't invest in it right now, but stay tuned, because I think there's going to be headlines made by modifications of neurofeedback.
Mm-hmm. Several people have asked, what does inattentive ADHD look like in adults versus the other form?
Well, yeah, sure, and this is an important point in general. Most adults do not have hyperactivity. So the difference between inattentive and, ADHD versus ADD, so to speak, is disruptive behavior. And it's more, men tend to be more disruptive, and that's why they get diagnosed. So the women don't get diagnosed because they're the opposite. They're serene, they're quiet. Nobody thinks of ADD. They dismiss them as depressed or slow or just shy. And you have to probe a little bit, but as you probe a little bit, you discover they've got so much going on inside of themselves. They're underachieving, which means their self-esteem is really low. They've been told they're slow. And once you prime them up a little bit and feed them a little bit, next thing you know, you see the full array of ADD symptoms minus disruptive behavior. They're quite the opposite of that. So that's why adult females don't get diagnosed, because they're not causing any problems. They're just quietly underachieving. But once you get them the right help, oh my gosh, they can really turn things around. Careers get saved, marriages get saved. They don't present with disruptive symptomatology. It's more quiet, serene. Emily Dickinson, I think, had this kind of ADHD.
Mm-hmm. What about a medication trial? How long should an adult keep trying a medication at different dosages or switching to another medication, assuming that he or she is in capable hands, professional hands?
No more than a day if you get real bad side effects. So, but what usually happens is you start with a low dose and you get no response. So then you gradually increase the dose, and you can do that, every other day. I mean, that's the great thing about these meds; they work right away. So you can go from 10 milligrams of Ritalin on Monday and be up to 40 milligrams by Friday, just by increasing it in 10 milligram increments. And you have the built-in feedback loop of side effects. So you keep increasing it until you either get target symptom improvement or side effects. If you get side effects, you switch to a different medication or you lower the dose. These trials can be fairly complicated, so they can take, a month to 6 weeks to find the right dose of the right medication. But each change can really be made, within 36 to 48 hours.
Mm-hmm. And on the medication note, someone says, do I have to take it every day or only when I'm required to multitask?
Well, you never have to take it. I mean, that's the whole point. It's not like it's not like insulin, where you'll die without it, and it's not like an antibiotic where you have to maintain a blood level. It's more like coffee. It's when you want it, you can take it. Now, most people get the best response if they take it regularly, if they take it every day, because you're not aware of how much focus helps you, no matter what you're doing. So I advise my patients to take it 7 days a week and then try stopping it every 6 months or so just to see if you still need it. But you don't have to do it that way. I had one patient who only took it for organic chemistry, and her grade went from a D to an A, and she got into medical school. So I mean, it's but usually the reluctance to take it regularly bespeaks side effects. It means that the dosing is wrong. there's some reason they don't want to take it regularly. So I usually explore, why don't you want to take it regularly? Medically speaking, it's fine. You can take it on alternate Tuesdays if you want to, but why don't you want to take it regularly is my question, and it usually comes back to some kind of side effect that needs to be addressed.
Right. Lots of questions on parents who are trying to get young adults to get some treatment. One woman, mother, says, my 2 boys are resistant to treatment, and their ongoing sense of denial over the consequences of their untreated ADHD lives really bothers me. How can I persuade them to get some treatment?
Yeah, and it should bother you. And you as the mom are probably not going to have much luck. If you can find someone else to encourage them, a coach, a grandfather, family doctor. I do a lot of this, of talking to young males. Really, it's against their code of honor. They say, I'd rather fail doing it my way than succeed with help. And so I see a lot of them, and I try to, kind of encourage them in a different direction. It's hard for you as mom. One thing you should not throw out of your toolbox, though, is bribery. Bribe them to go see. First, find a professional you know they'll get along with. Do your homework, and because you only get one shot at this, and then bribe them to have one appointment. And any expert who says you shouldn't bribe children does not have children. You can't raise children without bribery. We can call it other things, but it comes down to bribery. So do whatever you can to get your sons to someone who you've already vetted out, who you know they'll like, they'll relate to. Because it's in their manifest self-interest to take this seriously. I mean, as I said, this is high-stakes poker, and if you don't take it seriously, you're putting yourself at great risk of drug abuse, of car accidents, of school failure, all this kind of stuff that some of these things can just ruin your life early on. So it really needs to be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people who feel bad about themselves, they say their boss says that they didn't get the assignment right, and they're particularly tough on them. They feel bad about that. Their family, if you forget to take out the garbage, their family comes down on them. And they're really sort of worn out by it. And what kind of strategy can you come up with to help them sort of avoid feeling bad about themselves 24/7, or if not, at least part of the day?
Sure. Well, first of all, my heart goes out to all of those people, and I encourage them to try to find support groups, either through chat or Attitude organizes some of these. So try to find other people who are dealing with the same issues. Then, in fact, I think I just wrote something for you, Wayne, on how
Yes.
to deal with the negative self-talk and all of that, and try to understand it as a function of the world out there not getting it, and so educate your spouse, your family, your boss. Again, I would not use the term ADD with my boss, but I would say, I really have a lot to contribute, and punctuality is not one of those things, but I've got some great ideas. Now, bear in mind, the most important accommodation in the workplace is finding the right job. People talk about getting accommodations in the workplace. Most of them don't amount to a hill of beans compared to finding the right job. Now, of course, you have a job, you don't want to quit that, but be looking for another job. If you're in a job that is less than ideal, always be looking for another. Just the act of looking instills some hope. So you can go to work saying, I'm not stuck here forever, and you're not. And having ADD means you probably are pretty resilient, and you probably would be able to find another job. But finding that right job is tremendously important. Don't give up. Work with other people. Follow leads. And the same thing at home. If you've got people who are putting you down, you really need to explain to them that this is bad for me, but it's also bad for you, because I'm not going to be nearly as fun to be with if you keep kicking me all the time, you know. And then again, as I say, the time may come where you just say, well, goodbye. The getting out of a relationship or getting out of a job should not be the first option, but it should certainly be an option that you keep in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm. One last question, Ned, because so many people have asked about these computerized tests for diagnosis, like the TOVA. They're saying they don't trust them. Where do they fall in the realm of diagnostic
They're fine. It's the same thing with the checklist. They're fine to use. Go online, take a test. That's fine. But then use that as the prod to go see the professional. It should be. It can lead you to the doctor's office. So the tests are fine. They're not definitive. But they can sort of prompt you to go to the next step, which is to find the expert in your area that you ought to go to see. And a general rule of thumb is call the nearest medical school and ask for the Department of Psychiatry, and most of them will have someone who deals with adults who have ADD. Read my book first, so you can go in and educate them about the strength-based approach, because you don't want to go in and have the really demoralizing experience of being told in very fancy language, how deficient you are, and what a deficit disorder you've got. It's a real bummer. So you want to be working with someone who can say, look, you're the kind of person who has built this country. Right now you're in a quagmire, but that's because your ADD has not been dealt with. And if we deal with it, we'll get you out of the quagmire, and we'll get you to the top. One of the first people I ever treated, back when I was working with Kevin Murphy and Russ Barkley out at UMass, was a guy who the only job he was able to hold was as a night watchman. And he'd get fired. In one calendar year, he collected 120 W-2 forms. So he got hired and fired from 120 jobs. And that's a testament, A, to his ability to get fired, but B, to his persistence and ability to get a new job. His IQ was tested at 160. Well, once he got his ADD treated, his whole life changed. He was able to get out of the night watchman job, and he got into a management position and just started to thrive. So untreated, this can be crippling. Treated, it can be just, you can suddenly make good on the talent you've got. And that's what makes the condition so very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So just keep going. If one treatment doesn't work for you, keep trying other things, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where one of my watchwords is never worry alone. So find a professional who you can work with over the long haul. Find a professional who it's not instant success. So these things they take time, they take effort. It's a twisty, turny road, but work with someone who you like, who you can keep working with. And the general trajectory will be in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Ned, for all your insights and strategies. This was a great session.